Welcome to Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. What if you could learn from experienced real estate investors, find out what got them to where they are now, get insight into their daily habits, and take these insights to inspire your own growth? Each week, Jonathan Green shares an in-depth look at the mindful approach to real estate investing. Jonathan is a real estate investor, advisor, and coach, as well as the founder of Streamlined Properties and the team leader of Streamlined Properties on Market, brokered by eXp Realty. Whether you are looking to start from scratch, get to the next level, or just a straightforward and honest approach to real estate investing, Jonathan seeks to provide a free mentorship program you can take with you anywhere. Now, here's Jonathan.
Let's go. We're back with another week of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing. And before I get to my guest for this week, I just want to give you a couple reminders. Subscribing to the podcast is the thing that helps you make sure you get those brand new episodes every Monday and every Thursday morning, because we're coming in hot twice a week, scaling up to episode 100 very soon. It also helps if you share your favorite episodes with a friend, just in case they haven't latched on to the podcast yet. I would appreciate it. This week, we have Andrew Freed, and we have a great backstory that we talk about, and it relates to Bigger Pockets and how we both used Bigger Pockets, and that's actually where we met, in the DMs on Bigger Pockets. Andrew is going to talk about stabilizing multifamily properties, how he taps equity, and how he's already over 100 doors, and he just started in 2020. You're going to like this show. Let's go. This is episode 93 of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with my guest, Andrew Freed. Andrew is a multifamily investor since 2020. He's gotten up to 95 units, and he's used what we're going to call the Bigger Pockets process to get here, along with a lot of hard work and education. Andrew, welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me, John. I really appreciate it. Excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm excited. Since I like the history of how we met, so we're going to start there. How long ago was it that you DM'd me on Bigger Pockets? Because that was the first time that we connected. It has to be 2-3 years ago.
It was absolutely when I started in real estate. I was seeking mentorship and guidance all over Bigger Pockets in my local community, and you absolutely offered that, and you gave me a lot of really good help and guidance on advancing my portfolio.
Awesome. Yeah, it was like 2020 or 2021, right? Right in the beginning.
Yeah. It was right when I was like house hacking, and I was trying to get in my second or third house hack, and you were offering some good recommendations on how to do that.
Yeah, and one thing that I think is really important from your story for other people who are just getting started, I don't respond to every message, because a lot of messages, as you probably know now, are bad. Your message was great because you said, here's what I've done, here's what I'm working on, and here's the advice that I need. And I think like now, as you've grown to this, do you see the difference between how people may approach you and how that might hurt them by just saying like, hey, how do I become a real estate investor?
Yeah, and I mean, that also translates into hiring people as well. I mean, now I have like 6 or 7 people that work for me. And when they bring me a problem, I expect that they offer 2 or 3 solutions and some context on the dilemma, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's how I try to approach people, and that's how I expect people to approach me. It just makes kind of managing people and getting problems solved way easier, especially with somebody who doesn't have a lot of time.
Yeah. And so growing up, when was the first time that you remember having an interest in real estate as like something that could play, a role in your life?
I think it goes back to Monopoly. Like, I love Monopoly.
Me too.
Like, I like to say I won every game. I probably didn't, but I won most games. And the key to Monopoly is just whatever you land on, buy, accumulate assets, have a strong cash position. It's very similar to real estate today, But at the end of the day, like, I never thought real estate was possible. Prior to, I think, 2020, I always assumed you needed 20% down. So it just seemed like such a large barrier to me.
Yeah.
And as a result, I experimented in a lot of other asset classes like crypto or stock before I kind of found real estate.
Yeah, let me hit on that Monopoly thing, because I love that. A lot of people always talk about cash flow, the board game, but like Monopoly was the jam. And like, it's always, when you're playing, it's a group of four, and then there's the one person, like, they don't buy anything. And you're like, well, what do you think this game, like, they land on Baltic and they're like, I don't want that. Then they don't want Orient because it's light blue. And they're like, it's too cheap. I'm like, you got to buy something. And then they land on Boardwalk, but they don't have any money to buy.
Yeah.
It is actually, like, I remember thinking of them. If you really think of it down to the thing, green is houses, I would say red is multifamily, not hotels for the game. Yeah, that's interesting. So what was the first thing that led you to go? You started with a house hack, right?
I did. So I started with my one-bedroom condo back in Boston back in 2015. I think I got a six-figure job at that point. I was working at a good company and I decided to get a condo. And I brought 20% down to that. So I bought that in 2015. And then come 2020, when I wanted to get into real estate, that's when I kind of HELOC'd that and used that, like you said, to get my first 3-family house hack.
Yeah. I mean, how do you feel now about condo as a first investment? I think it's great because I think it's really safe. Like, you're not biting off too much. A lot of the repairs are going to be taken care of. How do you feel looking back at that? And do you still have it?
I think condos are a fantastic investment. Like you said, there's not a lot of overhead. A lot of the overhead's handled by the homeowners association. My condo was unique because it was almost like a value add. Like, I went into it when the condo was in disarray. I became a trustee and we had like no reserves. We had all this CapEx items, right? So I had to get over that, address the CapEx items, raise the HOA. And that served me really well. I mean, the condo's in fantastic shape now. But like you said, if the condo has good reserves and it's well managed, like, HOAs cover a lot of your overhead. So it makes it a great investment for sure.
Yeah, it's not, I mean, you're just not going to get that like $10,000 high. You missed this thing on a condo, which is like just a little, I really like condos as a first play, especially like you said, if you can put 20% down, at least you can lock that up. And then you did well enough to use it as a HELOC in just a few years, right?
Yeah. I love condos as well. And to your point, it's probably one of my units that I get the least calls about. I think I've gotten like 2 calls in the past like 2 or 3 years, or 3 years that I've rented it. So it's pretty easy to manage too. Very
because
easy.
you're paying for HOA, so you're basically, you're paying modified property management anyway for fix it. So yeah, a little bit less on the maintenance too. I like that. So you went from that and then to a 3-family. Was that a house hack, low money down?
That was an FHA loan, low money down. I think I got that at like a 2.375 interest rate, 30-year AM or something.
Yeah, everybody just cracked up.
So I'm never getting rid of that one.
Yeah.
But yeah, but I grabbed from my HELOC. So technically it was no money out of pocket.
Yeah. Yeah. And so did you know going into, I mean, when did you find bigger pockets in this journey? Because that's an important part of your journey. As for a lot of people, like I had been investing my whole life, but finding bigger pockets was like an aha moment. Like, holy shit, there's a lot of people out here who are like interested. A lot of crazy stuff in the forums, but like, you really feel like, wow, there's a lot of people into this. Did that help open your eyes? And when did you find it in the process?
Yeah, absolutely. So I first started with Rich Dad Poor Dad, come to the realization how powerful real estate is as an investment. And then at that point, I ran across Meet Kevin on YouTube, which before he became a stock star, he was very knowledgeable on real estate and actually had a great course that I took. So I took that course, and then at that point, I found Bigger Pockets, and from there, I poured into all the podcasts. I essentially did the Brandon Turner recipe of starting a meetup. I made it a goal to post in the forums every single day. Became an investor-focused agent. Even though I had a strong W-2, I did it primarily for networking reasons. Yeah. So, yeah, I pretty much used the Bigger Pockets recipe, and it really helped me grow.
Yeah, I mean, let's go through a few of those. When you started in the forums, like, I think for when you're new, it's hard to connect. You throw some lines out there, you get some hard money lenders.
Yep.
You know, how did you get through the noise in the forums to figure out, like, who was who?
I think just like in anything in life, it's all about providing authentic support and expecting nothing in return, right?
Yeah, great. That's a great point.
So when I approach the forums, I try to go there and I try to offer authentic help to people and expect nothing in return. And sooner or later, all of that great reciprocity compounds into people wanting to help you down the road, right? Yeah. But that's how I really got started in the forums. And it really helped me get a little bit of a following in the forums, and the fact that like I got a decent amount of upticks because I wasn't trying to sell people on something, you know?
Yeah, that's another great point. And I brought this up when I was on BP on the regular one. I actually look at who has more upvotes than posts, and that's important to me because it means that there's value in what you're posting. And I think that's a really good way to just, without talking to anyone, see like, hey, who's really adding value? Because people don't, it's like, it's annoying to do an upvote. So you really do it when like, hey, that's good. So that's something that you use there to see like who's who. And then again, you use that as your strategy, which I did as well. As I just scheduled 15 minutes a day and made sure I answered at least 5 questions. And I did that like every day for years. And then, people asked a lot of questions, but the questions they were better than normal. Eventually, once you kind of get the rhythm for it, did you start to meet partners, and did that help you with your meetup also? Because that's something great to talk about as well.
So I didn't meet partners on Bigger Pockets, but I did meet my mentor, because my mentor he hosted meetups all over Massachusetts and hosted a virtual one, which I found on Bigger Pockets. And when I attended the meetup, he was asking everybody if anybody knew a good venue in Worcester, Massachusetts for a meetup. And that's where I lived. I own units out there.
The light bulb. Yeah, yep. There it is.
Yep. And before he could finish his sentence, that weekend, I went out to about 5 different venues, took video. I got the manager's card. I got pricing information. I threw it in a nice Google Drive. I sent it to him. I'm like, I recommend these venues. He's like, this is fantastic. Like, would you want to be my first guest speaker at this meetup? I'm like, I would love to. Yeah. And then I guest spoke, and then he asked me to host the meetup. And then at that point, it's kind of history from there.
Yeah, those have been going well. How long have you been doing the meetups?
I've been doing the meetups for about 3 years.
Yeah, I mean, how would you like rank them in your overall scale, just in terms of like helping you grow by bringing in the other people? Because I do them too. I've obviously been to them. I just love them. I think they're great for brand new investors to get their feet wet and low pressure. How much has it helped you along the way, just to know like, hey, we're going to keep doing it, going to meet some new people, going to help some people, going to learn some stuff?
I mean, they're pretty much 90% of my success is a result of these meetups. I've met partners at these meetups. I've met mentees at these meetups. I've met lenders at these meetups. I've met mentors at these meetups. So like it's at the end of the day, it's the average of the 5 people you associate yourself with. And the more you're in the room with people who get it, people who have that mindset of being the best version of themselves and really seeking financial independence, because, real estate's funny in the fact that real estate isn't a money game. It's more of just trying to become the best version of yourself, and money just comes. It's weird. It's weird. So it's like, I feel like a lot of people into self-development get into real estate more for the self-development and less for the actual money component. At least I do.
There's a lot of people. It's a people business, and the people who are only focused on the money, they're never going to be good landlords. That's just not in the makeup. And I think a lot of people think it looks easy, and maybe if they're not good at building relationships, they're going to fail quicker than if they just made one, bad deal on a flip.
Exactly.
Yeah. And in the beginning, though, what was it like in the beginning when the meetup, when not a lot of people are coming? Because I think that for everybody out there is thinking like, hey, I should start a meetup. Like, I remember in the beginning of mine, it was like there were literally 3 other people on Zoom, and we're just like, but then 6 months later, a year later, we're at like 40 every time. And then we go in person after the pandemic. So what was it like in the beginning, knowing like, hey, we're going to have to get through this beginning part?
Just this whole journey of being an entrepreneur really opened my eyes to the fact that you got to get through the suck before you get to the great, right? And everything in life is going to have a point of suck, right? Like I posted for 2 years on social media, I had like 1 like, right? Yeah. Like, or, you host a meetup for a year and you have 10 people show up for a year, and then it builds and it builds and it builds. And, just like anything in life, you just got to be cool with the whole compound interest component and be fine in the fact that in the beginning, it's going to be a grind, but it's going to get better and better and better over time. And that's exactly what I recommend for meetups. If anybody's starting a meetup, I tell people you at least got to give it a year. Like you can't quit after like 2 or 3. You're not, it's going to be discouraging, to be honest with you, if you did. So.
Yeah, a great analogy to social media too. And also I would say for off-market mailers, people send out a batch of mailers and they're like, oh, I sent 500, it didn't work. It's like, hey, dum-dum, you have to do this for 6 months minimum just to see if those people are going to respond, where they stop at 4 months and then they turn the phone number off and then all the calls come at month 6 and they're not even, they don't even have the number. That's classic. And that's just, I think a lot of people want the short term of real estate when you went in and you said like, hey, I really want to do real estate as an investor, how did you separate knowing that you wanted to be long-term? Because the way that you invest is really focused on minimum like 10-year holds. How you know what's out there and what's on social media. How did you know that you wanted to be long-term as opposed to someone who wanted to like cash in quick?
I liked long term because I mean, I have a lot of debt under my name, but at the same time, I am risk averse, right? And when it comes to long term and when it comes to multifamily, every other strategy fits into long term rentals, right? It just provides so many exit strategies. So if it works as a long term rental, it's gonna work as a short term rental. It's gonna work as a medium term rental. It could work as a flip, right? So I just like the safe component of long-term rentals, and the fact that I also work a W-2, and I know I have a finite amount of time. I can't be spending 40 hours every week doing flips. So it was kind of a balance between time commitment and risk aversion.
Yeah, that makes sense. I worry for people who go in on flips and knowing, I mean, I think almost nobody's ready for their first flip. Honestly, you could be 5, 10 flips in, still not be ready for what's going to come. But especially if you're still working the job, which I always say is great. I think people try to leave too early, but you just knew like you're not going to have the time to flip, right?
Yeah, exactly. And I'm a project manager. Like the thing that's on top of my mind is time. How is time being used efficiently, right? And I just knew the most efficient use of my time would be to buy these long-term rentals, stabilize them in 3 to 4 months, move on to the next project, and let it. At that point, once it's stabilized, it only takes like an hour or two of management a month. It's not a lot of time.
Yeah. That's kind of become your portfolio is stabilizing multifamily assets, right? And then, getting them running and then hanging on to them.
Yeah, more or less. And then finding ways to tap the equity in different methods to buy more multis. Yeah, that's more or less been my strategy, and it's been pretty successful. And I specifically targeted multis in good condition that were operationally inefficient, so I can get into an asset, get it stabilized quickly, and move on without a big pull on all of my capital. And that's how I've been able to expand to so many units so quickly, because each project isn't so capital intensive. And a lot of times when it is capital intensive, that also correlates to it being time intensive, right?
Yeah.
So that was kind of the strategy I took.
So you really like the tired landlord, but the one who hasn't been, not paying attention to the property at all.
Yes, that's absolutely my preferred multifamily. I mean, I'll pick up a serious value add for sure, but it has to be worth my time. I got to be walking into a couple $100K in equity for me to do all that work, right?
Yeah. Was there a type of list that you were building that was helping you get into contact with more people that were what you wanted to? I think it's good to have an avatar in your head of who you want to buy from, and so that you mail to that instead of just spray and pray to everybody. Like if you don't want to do pre-foreclosures, like why are you mailing them?
So I have a unique strategy for finding deals. I found half of my deals on the MLS, and I found half of my deals through branding, through social media, through being considered a subject matter expert. So I spend a lot of my time in putting social media content out there, in going on podcasts, into doing meetups, into mentoring people, into doing masterminds with other successful real estate investors. And as a result, if a deal comes across their desk and they know they can't take it down, they bring it to me because they know I'm the multifamily guy in Worcester, right? And I've had the past 3 deals happen that way, all fantastic deals that somebody couldn't take down themselves, and they thought of me first and they brought it to me.
Yeah. Are the majority of your investments around Worcester?
I own 30 units in Worcester, Massachusetts. I own 65 New Bedford that I syndicated. So,
right.
So a majority of what I bought from a JV and an individual standpoint is in Worcester, yes.
And how many different buildings in Worcester of those 30 units?
I believe eight buildings or so.
Yeah. That brings up clustering, which is one of my favorite strategies, which is, of course, buying multiple properties in very close proximity. Have you got the benefits of maybe, using the leverage on one, you're taking out equity, so you get a good appraisal on one, and then you can use that for another one that's very similar property nearby?
Not from, to your point, that's a fantastic approach. Not from a comp approach, but I have used it from a management and a teams approach, right? Yeah. So I have the entire team in Worcester that I continuously use. So it makes managing each property way easier. I have an electronic Rolodex on Google Drive that I have, 3 electricians, 3 plumbers, 3 HVAC people. And I have an assistant that simply, whenever they get a call, they just go down the list, send somebody over there, and they handle it. So in regards to like just managing the properties, I probably manage my 24 units under, 3 hours a month.
Yeah, with assistance from other people. But again, you're
Exactly.
always managing the assistants, and your job is to train them to do the things the way that you want and to alert you if something, something major. I don't want
Exactly.
to hear later. I want to hear early. So, well, what did you learn in your first house hack, though, just as being a landlord? Because I think that can be a trouble area for some.
I think you alluded to it earlier that real estate's a people business, right? Like if you're really trying to be successful in real estate, you have to have empathy. You have to try to work on creating win-win scenarios for everybody, right? And that was my approach when I moved into my first multi. I mean, I think the first floor was the owner's son. He was paying half what he should.
Yeah,
And I gave him 3 months to leave, and I was completely kind. I gave him all the time he needed. He left, and I renovated that unit, and I got double the rent very quickly, right? So, and especially in tenant friendly states, it's really important to work with the tenant and not go straight to the court system.
completely agree. Yeah, I mean that because look, they have access to your house. They can put rocks down the toilet. They can light stuff on fire. Like I'm not trying to test anybody on anything. It is tough, and I think that's where ego can become a problem. Like I own the property. You should leave. You don't have a lease. You're month to month, but like you can't just padlock the door like I used to do 30 years ago. That was cool, but you can't do that anymore. Yeah. So how did you continue that same idea through all the properties as you were building out a team and making sure that they understood you wanted to be client centric and not, what a lot of people call slumlord behavior?
So about 70 to 80% of my tenants are inherited tenants, right? So what I do is I make it a normal practice when I close on a multi, I meet them in person to, explain, that I'm here to make the building better, see if there's any issues in the building we can address, and more or less just have that conversation, that verbal contract of, the expectation is you treat my unit right and you pay on time, and your expectation is I address your issues in a timely manner and I treat you with respect, right?
Yeah.
And I have that conversation up front, and a lot of times that resolves most tension in the building. And as long as I'm very timely about getting to their issues, it's not really a problem. And to your point, that's why I hired an assistant so we could get to people's issues in a timely manner.
Yeah, I think for fully occupied, whether it's 2, 3, 4 family, and if I'm coming in as a straight investor, I think I have leverage against the house hackers. The owner may want to sell to whatever the highest price is, but the first thing I'm asking them is like, hey, do you all want to stay? And if everybody wants to stay, I'm going to be telling them during showings, well before my offer's been accepted, hey, we're not kicking anybody out. My client, or myself, we're not house hackers. Like we want to be here. And then you use the leverage the other way. Like if there's an open unit, like, hey, I'm going to be here. I don't think you can really hide from being the landlord as a house hacker. And I don't think it serves you well, especially given what you said. You want to meet with the tenants and make sure that they know who you are so they know who to call or know who to call the assistant, that there's a face behind the name. How does that work at scale, though, for you?
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it's all about whether people like and trust you, right? Like, say if my tenant likes and trusts me, there's very little chance they're not going to pay me rent, right? Or
Yeah.
they're at least going to communicate with me on if they can't pay rent, and we can
Right.
come up with some sort of type solution. So I think the key is to be approachable, right, and to really have a customer service focused enterprise. But at the same time, be clear of like what I cover versus what I don't cover, you know. But yeah, I mean, to your point, it's a balancing act for sure. But it's like you got to approach it from a pragmatic standpoint. Like, for example, cash for keys. Like some landlords will have a principle, an ego, like they don't want to do cash for keys because the tenant's winning out. They didn't pay 3 months of rent. Now they're getting $5,000. Like
Yeah.
that's an ego thing. Meanwhile, if I give cash for keys and I get that unit rented 5, 6 months earlier, that's better from an ROI standpoint. So a lot of mistakes I see in being a landlord is people bring their ego into it, and people stand on principles and don't look from a pragmatic standpoint on what makes sense from an ROI perspective.
Yeah, I think ego is a big problem for investors in general, on anything, putting sale price too high, same thing, trying to, go to the courts first. Like that doesn't make sense. That's not going to help you. You have to try to work it out. When you get to a point where you can't, then of course I'd still be warning them, hey, listen, I'm not kidding. Like I'm really going to have to go, and then you have to do what you have to do, but they're never going to say later, hey, they didn't tell me. That's an important point. I mean, I think everybody learns as a landlord what's going to work for them and how much they want to be involved. But really, everybody should be learning that you have to, be good with the clients because they're the ones who are calling and they're the caretakers of your building. So how can you ignore them?
Yeah, and to your point, if you're not good with people, you might want to get a property manager who has somebody in place that is good with people,
Yeah.
right? Because if you have somebody taking calls who's not good with people, they can escalate things that don't need to be escalated.
Yeah.
Tenants will leave. Many things happen as a result of human miscommunication. So I
Yeah.
think that's very important in real estate.
Yeah, I agree. Like if you know that you're bad at something, you go into this thing where someone's like, "Well, I don't want to pay for property management," but you also don't want to do the job of being a landlord. So, how do you want to take care of your property, which is the asset? And you have these people who are caretaking your asset. And I think a lot of people make mistakes on that, especially if they're buying, C and below type properties. Like those are high management. The deal might look good and it might cash flow, but it's going to be high management, and your property managers they may not like it either.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, I think I own like 30 units in Worcester, and 6 units take up most of my time. And
Yeah.
you know where it is? It's in one of the worst locations in Worcester, right? But
Yeah.
I bought it for a fantastic price. I'm like, how can I go wrong with this? It's a great price. Well, I can go wrong because it's taken 5 times the amount of time to manage this thing, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but
At least you knew going in, like this one's going to be, more to do on this. And then hopefully there's a larger scale, long run on that. And sometimes you just decide like, nah, it's not going to work out and cut bait as well. Hey, it's Jonathan. This is just a brief interlude to talk to you about Deal Machine. Listen, I've used Deal Machine and I was crushing it with my Concerned Citizen postcard on Deal Machine. You can look that video up on my YouTube and find out how I did it. It works. Deal Machine works. I've had David Lecko, the CEO, on the podcast. So if you want a free trial of Deal Machine, the elite Driving for Dollars app, and I'm telling you, it works if you use it correctly. You can go to my link at bit.ly/Zen Deal Machine. Now, bit.ly is bit.ly/Zen Deal Machine. It's free and you'll be up and running in 2 minutes, and then you can figure out if you want to keep it. Let's get back to the show. So, what do you think the biggest lesson that you've learned from like masterminds, the ones where you've gone into groups when you were newer with people who've done a lot more than you? Because I think that's a big thing for investors. You always want to be moving up. Like you said, you are, who you spend the 5 people that you spend the most time with. And that means you have to go up in groups and not always down, although it's great to teach down as well.
I think the biggest lesson I learned was, first of all, accountability. Just telling people your goals, and then having them go back to that same meeting every single week. And
Yeah.
if you don't do your goals, you feel like a dud. That's big. But the other big thing I think is putting your dreams into words, into reality, right? Like, say, for example, I wanted to be on podcasts, right? So I just threw it on Facebook, like, hey, one of my goals this quarter is get on 5 podcasts. Anybody has any recommendations? And I got on 5 podcasts just from that one post, right?
Yeah.
Or like, one of my goals is I want to close 20 units this year. So as I close units, I counted it down and I put it out in the world and I held myself accountable to the public, right? So I think many people, they have their dreams, they have their goals, but they don't say it or verbalize it or put it out into the universe. And I think that's incredibly important.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like having a cool secret that you want to get to just means you're hiding from the fact that you want to get there. You're not going to get there if nobody knows. You need the help of other people. And like you said, you don't want to be the only person who shows up at a mastermind of 8 and like didn't do their homework,
Yeah.
They go around the room. Yep, I did that. I closed 3 units. I thought about it, but I didn't really do anything, that you want to meet the, who's in the group. And it's also good to be running those groups. But that's another good analogy for the meetup, because you're always going to show up as someone doing the meetup. And I think that's important. So people know like, hey, if I take a month off, I'm going to show up. Andrew's going to be there, going to have a guest speaker. I'm going to know some people. And I think that really provides the welcoming thing. I've fallen into the trap occasionally, even after years of doing them. Like if I get a bad turnout, I really do get annoyed because like I have people spending money to bring the food. And it's like, someone will text me after, oh, was the meetup this week? I'm like, it's always at the same day, different place. You just need to look on the website. How have you stayed so consistent, with that and being the one who's running it, collecting the guests, making sure everybody's having a good time. That's important and not that easy to do.
Yeah, I mean, I can relate with you. Like, I think I'm starting a new meetup in New Bedford. We had 10 people. It's kind of demoralizing. I'm not going to lie, but you just
Yeah.
got to fight through it. Like, not every day's got to be a high. There's got to be troughs in your journey, right? But going back to, sorry, what was your question again?
Yeah, I mean, the scale of the meetups in general, how did you get through the part knowing like, hey, every week's not going to be? Because I know like myself, I have fallen into the trap where I'm like, you know what, I just gonna like, I like sometimes I shut down for a month,
Yeah.
but you've been consistent because I see it on social media.
Systems, virtual assistants, systematizing what you need to do in doing meetups and delegating it out as much as possible has been critical. Because I host, two meetups. Like, you got to get the guest, you got to get the slide decks, you got to get the bio, you got to market it, you got to create marketing material, right? Like,
Yeah.
I have BAs do all that for me, right? Like, I barely even post about the meetup.
Yeah.
So I just recruit the guests. That's pretty much all I do. I recruit the guests. They even do my slide deck for me. So
Yeah.
it's like, just like you said, it's very important to sit in your strengths and delegate your weaknesses. And that is not the best use of my time.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in the middle of reading 10X is Easier Than 2X now by the strategic coach guy and Benjamin Hardy.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that's just like another eye opener. Like, why are we all doing the stuff that we know we don't even like to do and we're not good at when we can pay someone really not that much to do it and then also free up all the time to do it? Is that how you got to this New Bedford deal? I mean, that was the last deal, the big one, New Bedford?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So tell us about that deal because I think that's important because that's outside of the area and a larger amount of units together.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, it's all about the Pareto's principle and identifying the 20 and staying in the 20 and delegating the 80. But the way I found that New Bedford deal was through branding and through masterminds. I mean, I was part of a mastermind. One person in our group was an off-market specialist, sent out a bunch of mailers. They ran across a 65-unit portfolio in New Bedford, Massachusetts. It was an estate sale. Somebody died, and it was going through the estate process. And we actually got a hold of the seller before it could even be sold. So he found the deal. He couldn't raise money, and he thought of me. So he brought the deal to me, and me and my partner said, "Yeah, we can raise the money." And kind of we went from there. We walked the properties. It looked great. We got a fantastic price per unit. The market had great fundamentals. It was only about an hour and a half away from us. And the best part of all, it was an estate sale, and they appraised it. They appraised it at 6.5 million, and we had it under contract for 5.5. So we were literally walking into like a million equity.
Million equity. Yeah, that's awesome. What was it like raising money like that? Was that the first time that you raised money on a larger scale?
It was absolutely the first time I've raised any money. Prior to that, I've always used my own money. So it was an absolutely a foreign concept to me. And to that point, if you are going to raise money, I highly recommend you invest your own money first. And you have successful investments before you take other people's money. So I definitely did that first. And then in regards to raising money, I never did it, but I did surround myself around people who have raised money. And one tip that really helped me was somebody said I made a list of, the 200 people that I thought would invest, and I reached out to 3 a day. And then by a month, that's almost 100. By 2 months, that's 200, right? And that's exactly what I did. I made a list of everybody, and I just reached out to 3 people a day. Told them about the opportunity, see if they were interested, got them a call. I mean, just worked my way down the list.
Yeah, it's not like you're asking someone to like donate to a random fake GoFundMe. I mean, there's a big asset involved that has returns and there's numbers that you can attach to it. So I think, for people who get scared of that part, like you hopefully have the backing of whatever type of deck you have to support it. And if someone's not interested in investing, like great, they'll probably watch it on social media and maybe they show up for the next one. How important has social media been to you? Because I've watched your journey on social media and I really like social media. I just know there's a lot of crap out there, but I think over time you can really tell who's there. Are, is people just giving away value for free? Yes, that means they're probably there to help. Might they have a class at some point? Sure. They probably deserve it. If you give away free stuff for 3 years and then you have an ask, no one's going to be like, oh, I can't believe they're asking, for, to pay at this because you put in all the work.
Yeah, I love social media because in my opinion, it's the cheapest marketing platform there is. Once you put something out there, it's evergreen marketing. It literally works for you forever. Like it works for you while you sleep. So yeah, social media has been instrumental to my ability to raise capital, for my ability to find deals. I think right before I got that syndication under contract, my Bigger Pockets rookie podcast was released. And that really gave me momentum to even feel like I had credibility to ask for the money. Because prior to that, it was like almost like self-limiting beliefs, like, who am I to ask for money? Who am I to offer this deal? Right. But once I was on a prominent podcast or putting myself in social, it kind of gave me that credibility to build up the confidence to even have the ask.
Yeah, and I think it's important you had already built a social media presence that maybe those people hadn't seen. So that then when they go over there, they're like, oh wait, look at all this material, and then they can go through and try to figure out. I've always said that podcasts in general, I think, are the easiest way to find out if someone's actually into real estate investing and can help, because you can't just talk for 45 minutes if you don't know what you're doing. You can have a good host, but somebody's going to flounder at some point. That's why I think podcasts are so important. When you started and you were listening to all the Bigger Pockets podcasts, did those help you not just in motivation, but figuring out hey, I want to meet that person long term. That's someone I definitely want to meet, at BPCon or somewhere else.
Yeah, absolutely. It was almost like I viewed a lot of these podcast guests as mentors, right? Because you're the average of the 5 people you associate yourself with. So if you associate yourself with super successful real estate investors via hours of podcasts every day, that's got to rub off on you, right? And I mean, that's how I learned more about your story, which I loved, and that's why I heard about many other people's stories as well. And I mean, at the end of the day, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for Bigger Pockets and it wasn't for Brandon Turner, who inspired me that I actually could do this.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think that's the importance of podcasts, the forums on Bigger Pockets, anyone who's making YouTube content. Sure, you could fall into the wrong rabbit hole, but whatever gets you motivated to go out there and do it, there's just millions of free videos out there from all of us just posting stuff, where you have to be diligent though to learn, just like you and I were. We said, hey, we're going to just post on Bigger Pockets, or we're going to answer questions. And I think that's where people fall off. It's a consistency thing for everything, including what we're talking about with the meetups. If you just do that same consistent thing, hey, I'm just going to read stuff on Bigger Pockets 15 minutes a day, or I'm going to consume real estate reels, investing reels on TikTok, whatever it is. If you do that every day, you're going to turn around, just like you said, 30 days later, and you're like, wow, I'm getting somewhere now. And the pieces, I think, start to come together after all that.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, for sure.
Yeah. So for somebody new getting in, you haven't been in it that long, really 3 years on your journey to 95 units. What's one piece of advice you would give investors who are trying to hop in? Obviously, rates are high. There's other ways to acquire property, but what's one thing you would tell people now who are really, really wanting to dip their toe in, but they don't know how to get it in there?
Don't use fear as an excuse. The only successful real estate investors out there are the people who take action and make it happen and figure out along the way. Every single real estate deal, you think it played out how I planned? It didn't. But I got good at pivoting. I got good at learning. I got good at surrounding myself around people who knew the right answer, and I didn't have to go through the heartache of figuring it out myself. Right. So yeah, don't use fear as an excuse. Take action.
Yeah, and I'd liken that. I think analysis paralysis is fear, guised in a two-word thing that sounds like you can't get over a hump. And that usually comes from confidence, which I would say, and I'm sure you can validate, a lot of people, when they show up at that first meetup, are like, wow, okay, now in real life, these people are all doing deals. 3 months later, they're doing deals because they're watching people just like them do deals. It's not like everyone's dressed up in a suit and pulls up at a Lambo in a meetup. They're just regular people in shorts. Yeah. And I think that really helps the dynamic of kind of getting out of that analysis paralysis. But there is probably a decent amount of fear leading up to that first meetup. Just posting in a forum or showing up. I think we're both telling everyone, show up, go to a meetup. Just talk to one person. If you get scared, go home. But it's definitely going to be worth it. Don't you think it's such a big part of the journey?
It is. And to sit in that fear and to ruminate in that fear and to get comfortable with that fear. I mean, I am not an extroverted person. It wasn't comfortable for me to get on social media and make a video, but the more you do it, the better you get, it's so you got to be good with just all aspects of that, because to achieve financial independence, you have to go through a lot of unknowns, right? And to go through unknowns, you have to conquer fears. So you got to be comfortable with conquering fear after fear after fear.
Yeah. One thing I want to talk about, because I created this podcast as a mindful approach to investing, but you're really into self-development, as am I. How do you put those two together, and how much has that helped you? You know, you're working on your business, but you're also working on yourself. So do these things, by doing that, is it helping you increase, your real estate investing journey along the way?
It's been the single reason why I've been able to scale to the place that have scaled. I mean, I do Miracle Morning every single morning. I probably spend around 2 to 3 hours of personal development every single morning, and I try to become the future self that I want to be. And when you do that, when you live with integrity, when you live with ethics, people want to be around you. People want to invest in you. People want to be around great people, right? So it attracts opportunity when you focus on working on yourself, in my opinion. And like you said, it's incredibly important just to provide immense value to the world and expect nothing in return. And the world will give you something in return, whether you like it or not. That's how reciprocity works. And I mean, that's been the single biggest contributor towards my success.
Yeah, we've talked about, like, being around the 5 people that will make you the person that you want to become along your journey, because obviously you're not very old. Did you have to, were there people who were like, oh, real estate investing stupid, why are you doing that? Were there friends who you had to say, like, you know what, I don't think you're going to come on this journey with me because you're not supportive, or you don't understand, or you think it's like, crypto or something, which, to each their own.
I am very protective about the things that go into my mind, be it news, be it surrounding around people who don't go after their goals and drown themselves in other vices like sports or video games. All of that rubs off on you, whether you like it or not, right?
Yeah,
So to your point, I have limited myself around some past friends that didn't carry the values or the integrity, the ethics, or the goals or the dreams that I do, right? And just a quick example of this is, like, my mentor owns hundreds of units, right? And he's been my mentor for 2-3 years. Like 3 years later, I own 100 units. It's like who you surround yourself with spills over to you, whether you like it or not. So I am extremely intentional about that. And as a result, I did join GoBundance because they're all about self-development and being the best versions of yourself. So.
Yeah, I really think, like, you're not going to get anywhere in life if you're not doing personal development. Are there people who do well? Yeah, those people a lot of times burn the stuff that they make, though, and that's where ego comes into play. And like we've said multiple times, investing is really this kind of person to person business. And the more you just work on the relationships, the more deals will materialize when you least expect it. They're going to say, oh, Worcester, Andrew Freed. And you're like, yeah, right here. And that's just a consistency thing. I think that's important, though, because as much as we've said, if you spend time around 5 people who are anti-investing, like, you're never going to do anything. Even if that's your family, just don't talk to them about this stuff. Be around for whatever dinners you have to be, but they're going to drag your journey down. The people who don't want you to grow away from them, they're not in it for you. And that a lot of time is, they're saying, oh, you want to become a big shot. And you're like, well, not a big shot, but I'd like to grow. I'd like to grow generational wealth. I mean, definitely don't want to feel bad about that. And hopefully people can take that with them and really just say, that's where you do. Just show up at a meetup. All you need to do is, like, meet one person who you get their contact info. That's like one new person that can add to your journey, and maybe reduce one person who's pulling you down on that journey.
Yeah, I think, what's the analogy with the crabs in the water? When crabs in a bucket. When a crab tries to climb out of the bucket, the other crabs pull it down, right?
Yeah.
And that's very symbolic of life, right? So I try to find people who push me up. I don't try to surround myself around people who bring me down, because it's just not good for anybody.
Yeah, you're not going to have the confidence to do deals if someone's always in your ear telling you can't do this, or that deal's not good. How do you even know the numbers when you've been, like, working hard to do it? Yeah. Awesome. Andrew, where is the best place for people to get in touch with you? I think it might be Instagram.
Yeah, people can find me on Instagram at Investor Freed, also on LinkedIn and Facebook at Andrew Freed. I'm always happy to help other investors, so definitely feel free to reach out.
So what's your goal for the future? Like, you've really done well over these 3 years, and you've been focused on assets. When you say 3 more years in the future, what do you want that to look like? Is it freedom, time, assets? What are you looking forward to?
So my goal when I started this journey was retire in 5 years. So I'm on 3 years in. So, I mean, the goal would be to, and by retire means work on what I want to work on.
Right.
Right. I'm not going to just sit
that's
on
freedom.
it.
Freedom.
Time freedom. Yeah. But my overarching goals over, I think, 10 years is probably I want to syndicate 10,000 units. I want to actively own 400 units. I want to travel to 100 countries because I absolutely love traveling. I want to help 10,000 people reach financial independence because people help bring me up and I feel need to help other people. And I want to write a book on thought freedom, on like,
awesome.
on things on like you mentioned, not letting external forces affect the thoughts in your mind.
Yeah, but I mean, you're showing a journey. I mean, this is speaking things into existence and then you follow them. Sometimes we're not going to get to all of them, but hopefully for people who are using personal growth as part of their life, it's just because you found something different that you're going to like more to do instead of saying, oh, I just can't do it, you know?
Totally. Absolutely.
Awesome, man. Well, it's been a pleasure from 3 years ago in the DMs to meeting you at BPCon for the first time not that long ago. I'm glad that we did that in person before we got to this podcast, but it's been a pleasure having you on the show, man.
Likewise, I'm honored to be here and thank you for your tutelage throughout the years.
Yeah, man. Appreciate it. All right. You can find Andrew on Instagram at Investor Freed. And then if you look up Andrew Freed, you'll find him in other parts if you just go to the bio. He's in Worcester, Mass. That was Andrew Freed. I'm Jonathan Green. We'll see you next week. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Zen and the Art of Real Estate Investing with me, Jonathan Green. And I just want to remind you, and this is always an uncomfortable part, I don't want you to think that I'm begging for you to like, subscribe, follow, do whatever you have to do for the podcast, leave a 5-star review. But if you like the podcast and you think it adds value in the real estate investing sphere, then just do me a personal favor. Like the podcast, follow it, share it when you can with your friends, and be so kind as to write a 5-star review if you believe it deserves a 5-star review up against what else is out there. I would really appreciate it, and I hope you keep listening.